This one's about Nintendo. Nintendo.
Nintendo.
A Nintendo.
Nintendo has announced games it plans to release this
Mary
year.
Poppins, y'all.
Welcome to Ware Gaming Weekly for the week of February 13th, 2019. This week we have some inside news about the past and the future of PlayStation, a big update for Red Dead 2 online multiplayer, and much more. My name is Nicholas Ware, and to my right, my brother, Joshua. Say hi, Josh.
Hi, Josh.
For your information, Ware Gaming Weekly is released every Wednesday on YouTube.com and on podcast services. We recently updated it to where it kind of just finds new feeds to upload us on, and it lets us know where you can find it. So right now you can find it on Anchor, you can find it on iTunes,
Spotify.
and Google Play, and Spotify. You can no longer get it on Podbean if you used Podbean because we transferred to a different service. But you might be able to find the old episodes, which were not really old because this is week 6. Anyway, you can also find us on Twitter at WareGaming_ and email us to weekly@waregaming.com. We would love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Join the conversation.
So we're just going to get right into it because I think there's at least 10 things to talk about today.
At least.
So Josh, why don't you kick it off for the who, what, and where with PlayStation's skipping E3.
So this is from Colin Stevens over at IGN. PlayStation exec explains why Sony is skipping E3. Sony Interactive Entertainment Worldwide Studios chairman Sean Layden recently discussed why Sony is skipping E3 this year, and how the company is focusing on fewer but bigger games. In an interview with CNET, Layden spoke about Sony's early involvement in E3 and how in the 90s the show served both retailers and journalists. He feels these focuses have ultimately changed and can now be served better elsewhere. Now we have an event in February called Destination PlayStation, where we bring all the retailers and third-party partners to come hear the story for the year. They're making purchasing discussions in February. June now is too late to have a Christmas holiday discussion with retailers. So retail has, this is still Sean Layden. So retail has really dropped off, and journalists now, with the internet and the fact that 24/7 there is game news, it's lost its impact around that, said Layden. So the trade show became a trade show without a whole lot of trade. The world has changed, but E3 hasn't necessarily changed with it. And with our decision to do fewer, bigger games over longer periods of time, we got to a point where June of 2019 was not a time for us to have a new thing to say. And we feel like if we ring the bell and people show up here in force, people have expectations. Oh, they're going to tell us something. Layden ultimately spoke about how E3 might need to change into something more akin to a fan-centric show like Comic-Con, saying, quote, we are progressing the conversation about how do we transform E3 to be more relevant. Can E3 transition more into a fan festival of gaming where we don't gather there to drop a new bomb? Can it just be a celebration of games and have panels where we bring game developers closer to the fans? It's a long article.
Yeah.
Layden also discussed how Sony's current developers are focusing on fewer but bigger projects. I think we've done a whole lot over the last 3 or 4 years to get us to a place right now where we're building fewer games per year than ever before. But we're spending more time, more energy, and certainly more money on making them. So we're striking on all the beats that we want to, and we're getting both critical and commercial acclaim. In conjunction with its current studios, Layden spoke of how Sony looks at acquiring new potential studios. Let's see now what we might add to our arsenal. I've looked at some opportunities in the past. It's an opportunity to look for the ones that are. It's an opportunity to look for the ones that are the best cultural fit. We're always exploring new opportunities. If we found a partner or team or a game that we felt particularly meaningful and interesting in a service area, we will look to bring that in. We are always open to that kind of experience. Layden also discussed how Sony isn't chasing battle royale trends, saying, "I don't want to get into Me Too. I think the world's got all the battle royale it needs right now." This goes on, and I mean, I've pretty much read the whole article, but that's just Sony being like, we just don't need this, and with they kind of started doing something similar with PSX last year the last year they had it, where it was less about showing the big games like The Last of Us or anything, but they started bringing developers on the stage and just having them dive into what they're making and how the process has been, and more of an intimate setting and conversation rather than uh, blockbuster, trailers and announcements and things like that. I think they kind of want to get closer to the fans in a sense, but they also don't want to talk a lot.
Yeah.
So they want to talk about what's important, but they don't want to They also don't want to set expectations because people had negative reactions to that PSX because of how they had set it up.
You mean the E3?
No, that PSX was particularly.
Oh, okay, yeah, I remember.
Oh, yeah, E3 too, but people went into PSX like, oh, they're not doing a press conference, then what are they going to do? They're just going to sit around on stage and talk, and it was an interesting idea, and people just had expectations of what PSX was up to that point, and they just didn't have that to talk about because they're not releasing 20 games a year; they're releasing 3. So.
I think I agree to a certain extent that they don't. Well, they say they don't really need this, and maybe they don't. But I think E3 has been around forever. Every June, you get together, all these major publishers and companies to celebrate games. And so for me, it kind of feels like, on one hand, it feels like kind of a baller move. Be like, we don't need this. Some of it may be out of like, we're the best right now, and so we don't need to spend that time. But hearing him talk about, talking about the like mechanics of it, like, well, E3 is a trade show, and since there's not any trading, then like he says, all the trading we've already done. So this is just for the fans. Right. But I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. He says something about there's a 24/7 news cycle with games just on their own, that I feel like one point that it's kind of missing, in my opinion. Maybe it's not missing. Maybe it's just looking at it differently than I am. Is that I think there still needs to be that hype moment every year. And this is not necessarily saying that there's not going to be a hype moment, but having it, I like that one momentous thing. And until we know what that's going to be, right now it's just kind of like,
Well, Sony wasn't going to have that because they're not going to announce a new game right now because they're gearing up for PS5 and they're not quite ready to talk about it. What games they have coming out. They've talked about them for years.
Right.
There's no reason to come on and talk about those games. If they have a press conference, people are going to expect that to be what they talk about.
Right. But I think I think that I'm not saying that they should do an E3 anyway.
Yeah.
But I just don't think they should rule it out.
No, and I think that's what he's kind of talking about. Like, can we come to E3? Can we change E3 to where if we come, people aren't expecting that one big thing. Like, that'll happen here and there, but like, we don't want to go into this and people are like, oh, well, Sony was terrible this year. They didn't show anything. We've seen all the stuff. Blah blah blah. All they did was sit on the stage and talk. But I think that what he's wanting would actually be interesting for at least a section of the fan base. But they still do. E3 is a trade show, and not going to E3 because they're not doing trade. It hasn't really been a trade show for
Mm-hmm.
years. It's been a fan show. That's what I mean. It really grew out of like the magazine era where we would get magazines that we couldn't wait for the July or August issue to come, and it was like 500 pages long because you
Yeah.
had all the big blowout of E3, and then finally it was on. We could actually sit and watch the conferences. And that was the cool thing. There was always the dream of going to E3 and getting the cool experience, getting to play games before anybody else. And
Yeah.
at that time, there was booth babes and stuff like that. We're like, oh, I want to go because I'm 12 years old. But so our generation, our generation of gamers has come to expect like E3 to be really important.
Right. Right.
And I think they can shift E3 to be something like that. But Sony still goes to like what's that one that just happened in January?
Gamescom.
No, not the games. The tech.
GDC?
CES.
CES.
They still do those kind of shows and
Right.
have their own like
Mhm.
announcements throughout the year. So I don't know that I buy that they're not doing E3 because like well the journalists don't matter or the trade isn't that because they still do things and at CES where they could just announce it whenever they want it, but they still go to CES for those reasons because I mean CES is bigger than E3,
Yeah.
but I think the principle can carry over.
I know one thing about E3 this year is that Xbox will definitely have a better press conference than Sony will
Yes, well,
in 2019 at E3.
that could be up for debate. Maybe they just bomb it so hard and they're like, you know what, Sony's was better because they didn't say anything. But no, I don't expect that. They're on a track to really bring it forward. So let's move on. We got a lot to cover. Speaking of PlayStation, this is Colin Stevens again. This might have been like the same
Day.
This is probably the same day. There's a DICE 2019 keynote. So Sean Layden basically discusses what Sony learned from the PlayStation 3's missteps. I'm going to see how long this is. All right. During his DICE 2019 keynote speech, Sean Layden discussed the lessons Sony has learned in game development, including how missteps with the PlayStation 3 led to changes with the PS4. In his Beyond Generations keynote, Layden discussed 3 lessons repeating yourself, Colin. The 3 lessons has learned in game development: quality above all, embrace new ideas, and people want to play. When discussing quality above all, Layden said, PlayStation 2 was an industry triumph. It remains one of the best-selling consoles of all time. But coming off the heels of that was PlayStation 3, a stark moment of hubris in the nearly 25 years of PlayStation history. As we sometimes call it, PS3 was our Icarus moment. For business, the fall was sharp. We hadn't listened to our customers. We created a devilish development environment. We reacted too slowly, and our network was underdeveloped. And worst of all, if you remember, was the price point. $600. And who was it? Kutaragi or
Right?
Katsuragi? It was like, was it Katsuragi who got on stage and said, "They'll get you'll get a second job to pay for this," and like Reed's Eraser, and it was just a big stumble right out the gates. Continuing on, while the PlayStation 3 and our fight to stay relevant has been well covered, what wasn't as well covered was the call we made at the time to transform our company into what we are today. We doubled our efforts to develop incredible games and strengthen our partnerships for the next generation. We listened to developers and gamers. We listened to this guy, referring to Mark Cerny, who is the PS4's lead architect. We created PS4, a console for developers as much as it was for fans. We focused on the quality of our games and on making titles that would stand the test of time, the way that best pieces of art often do. When talking about embracing new ideas, Layden focused on Guerrilla Games and how that team went from the first-person shooter Killzone to Horizon Zero Dawn, saying new IP isn't always easy, but it's always necessary. He also touched on PSVR. With VR, we are still learning a lot of the time. We can, you know,
Well,
leave
it's
most
all
of that out.
important. It's I think it's really fascinating putting these two stories together to talk about you know how they're laying the groundwork for the future.
Mm-hmm.
The decisions that they're making now, and looking at the decisions that they've made in the past. I've heard rumblings on the internet of people saying, well, you know, they're getting back to their PS3 ways with their kind of hubris,
Yeah.
like he mentioned, and how
I don't need this.
I don't need, yeah,
This is a baller move.
yeah, yeah. But I think, I mean, you could argue, well, he's saying like, I mean, I think he's trying to make sure we all know that they're aware, and as
Yeah.
candidly, Sean Layden, the guy who's been saying all of this stuff, is the face of PlayStation right now. Before it was Jack Tretton, during the PS3 era and the start of the PS4, and now it's Sean Layden.
Yeah.
If you watch the E3 press conferences, he's usually the first guy you see speak, if there's even a speaker at all. So I think having that sort of transparency is really important.
Yeah.
And while there are some things that are like kind of PR
Yeah.
speak, I mean the fact that he says they have called it their Icarus moment.
Yeah.
They're well aware of the way they treated that whole era.
Yeah. And I think that's what they're trying to move the brand towards too. We're not always going to have something to say, but when we say it, we want it to be important and not overstep what it is. Like we're going to create incredible games, and we're going to create a hardware that people are going to enjoy creating software for. But we're not going to. We're going to try to speak less, and not be like, well, you'll get a second job to pay for this because we're that awesome, and that's basically what they said.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting when they bring out the PS5 and how they do that.
Yeah.
Price point won't be more than $400.
You don't think
guarantee.
So? I heard someone say 500. I'm like, no.
Xbox One did that. Came out at $500. I don't know that necessarily hurt it, but it felt like you were paying $100 for a Kinect at the time.
Mm-hmm.
At the time.
Right. Yeah.
All right, Nick, take this one.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Kingdom Hearts 3 was the best-selling PS4 game on the PlayStation Store in January. This is Tyler Fisher at comicbook.com. Also has the top 10 sales for PS4, PSVR, and the free-to-play games on the PlayStation Store. So two big games released in January: Resident Evil 2 and Kingdom Hearts 3. And while both were critically acclaimed, one had to come out on top. And according to someone else, it was Kingdom Hearts 3. The top 10 PS4 games of January is as follows. Number 1, Kingdom Hearts 3. Number 2, Resident Evil 2. Grand Theft Auto 5. Call of Duty Black Ops 4. Madden NFL 19. PUBG coming in at number 6. Red Dead Redemption 2. FIFA 19. Minecraft, and Battlefield 5. I'm kind of surprised to see Battlefield 5 and PUBG on this list. But January is kind of a slow month.
Everybody's talking about how Battlefield 5 is not doing very well, but they're still in the top 10. They've been in the top 10 since they released. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like what Activision was saying with, Destiny Forsaken not performing well when it was number 6.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was number 6 in the month that Forsaken came out.
Oh, well. For the top 10 for PSVR, Beat Saber comes in at number 1. Job Simulator, PSVR Worlds, Super Hot VR, Until Dawn Rush of Blood, Farpoint, Rick and Morty Virtual Reality, Arizona Sunshine, Firewall 0 Hour, and Surgeon Simulator.
I don't know that any of those are new.
No.
I'm not sure, but the last, I think, Rick and Morty I think that's been out. Arizona Sunshine.
Yeah, all these games have been out for a while.
Yeah.
But Beat Saber still coming in at number 1. And then the top 10 free-to-play games. Number 1 is Realm Royale. Number 2 is Fortnite. Warface, H1Z1 Battle Royale. Brawlhalla. Warframe. Paladins. 3-on-3 Freestyle. DC Universe Online. And Trove.
For this, is this the the best sales? Yeah, sitting atop the PS4 sales chart. I was curious if that was sales or just like downloads.
Right. Well, I'm
because
assuming
you see DC Universe Online, which is like a 10-year-old game
Mhm.
at least at this point. I'm surprised to see that in the top. Of course, maybe just free to play is not super popular on PlayStation, other than the top 2 there.
Yeah, and the fact that this Realm Royale, which I've not really heard of much.
I've heard of it. I've heard people say, "Oh, it's fun," but I don't
Mhm.
really know anything about it. I'm sure it's just
Another
VR take.
I know next month we'll most likely see Apex. Well, actually, for like the next 5 months, we'll probably see Apex. At the number 1.
Easily.
So yeah, not really surprising much of this. I am a little surprised. Well, maybe Kingdom Hearts 3. Most people will probably say Resident Evil 2 is a better game than Kingdom Hearts 3, but I think the anticipation of Kingdom Hearts 3 and the curiosity for
people have gotten a real Resident Evil game, or several real Resident Evil games, in the time we've been waiting for Kingdom Hearts 3. So
yeah.
Although it is surprising to see Resident Evil 2 came out a week ahead of Kingdom Hearts 3, which came out on the 29th of January, and it's still in the top. It's still
it had 2
top
days
the charts. It had 2 days to sell more than everything else.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yep. So go check it out.
Mm-hmm.
We will have a spoiler cast coming out soon, maybe this week. On Kingdom Hearts 3.
We'll probably get something down this week. I'm gonna have to write some notes though, because
yeah,
got a lot.
But
to
we
say.
both beat it.
We both beat it.
We actually haven't even talked about it with each other.
Now we're gonna do live reactions to what we think about it when we do the spoiler cast. So stay tuned for that.
Speaking of Apex Legends reaches 10 million players in just 3 days. This is from Stephen Talby at Push Square.
I don't know if it's necessarily to read this one, because this I forgot to let you know that this number is outdated.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
What's the new number?
The new number I saw was like yesterday. They're at 25 million downloads.
Wow.
And with 2 million concurrent players. That is incredible. The guys over at Respawn have just knocked it out of the park with this stealth release. I'm seeing comments all over the internet saying it's their favorite battle royale type game. People who didn't like the other battle royale games came in and they're like, "This is incredible." So I'm looking forward to trying to.
Yes, I'm definitely gonna give it a shot.
Dip my toes in there. If anybody saw the tweet, we're gonna try to start streaming on Twitch. You can find us there right now at Ware Gaming _ on Twitch. So it's probably twitch.tv/Ware Gaming _ I've got the equipment coming in, and we'll follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and we'll let you know when that goes live. So we'll probably and we're gonna play Apex, and then we'll probably get into Anthem when it comes out, and then we'll probably switch on and off from that, and maybe Destiny, and we'll just see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
So stay tuned for that as well.
All right. There we go.
Thank you, Colin Stevens. So everybody needs to go over to IGN and click on this guy's.
We have at least three
Colin Stevens stories. This one's about Nintendo. Nintendo.
Nintendo has announced games it plans to release this year.
Mary Poppins, y'all. All right. Nintendo has unannounced games it plans to release this year. In a recent
Surprise! That's
right.
Obvious statement is obvious.
Well,
and I'm not saying that against Colin Stevens as much as it's like, of course there's going to be.
That the whole title? I thought there was like 11. I thought 11 was in the title, because I saw
when I looked at this article, it did not give me a number.
Okay. What I remember saying was Nintendo has 11 unannounced um,
Hmm.
games. I don't know if it was this story or another story. I can't remember. But anyway, Nintendo has unannounced games it plans to release this year. I think the number is 11. In a recently released Q&A summary, Nintendo revealed it has unannounced games that it plans to release within 2019. In Nintendo's Q&A summary for its fiscal year ending March 2019, Nintendo Entertainment Planning and Development General Manager Shinya Takahashi responded to a question about Nintendo's process for software development, saying, I have heard some people say we have a tendency towards slow development, but that's certainly not true in every case. We have titles currently in development that we haven't announced yet, some of which we're preparing to release this year, and I don't anticipate the kind of delays that they would be concerned about. While many Nintendo games, like the recently rebooted Metroid Prime 4, are announced well before they are released, Nintendo has been making a habit of announcing games and releasing them within a relatively short period. Major games like Pokemon Let's Go were announced in May 2018 and released in November, and Super Mario Odyssey was officially announced during the 2017 Switch event, and then released in October of
2017.
2017. Right. What these unannounced games is anybody's guess, though Nintendo has plenty of announced games that are set to be released in 2019, including Fire Emblem Three Houses, Daemon X Machina, Luigi's Mansion 3, Yoshi's Crafted World, Animal Crossing, and a core Pokemon game.
I'm very excited. I saw another tweet that, I think it was just a bunch of people predicting there's a Nintendo Direct coming out. We record on Tuesday night, so when this airs, the Nintendo Direct will have been published.
Well, maybe. I think it said it's going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So sometime on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Not sometime. At 5 p.m. on Wednesday, they are doing a Nintendo Direct.
Yeah, so keep an eye on that. I imagine that we'll at least get something about Animal Crossing.
They have to talk about Animal Crossing. Like
maybe a release window for Metroid Prime Trilogy.
That would be awesome if they.
Because they just
have, like we talked about last week, if they have that in their back pocket and they're ready to pounce, that'd be great.
Especially since they just had to announce this bummer news that we talked about a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting, but it's a bummer for people who are really excited about that franchise. So to get them like a promissory, like this is for how you can
mm-hmm.
pacify the time. And also, I've never played a Metroid. Well, I have. I remember walking around in the first Metroid Prime on the GameCube. I'm guessing, and that's about it. I remember getting scared of these bugs that were flying at me.
Yeah. That would make sense for them. With them just releasing that news, and them having this in their back pocket. All right, we're gonna have a Nintendo Direct in February, so let's get this news out right now, and then in February we're going to talk about the release window for Metroid Prime Trilogy. So that would be interesting to see, as well as this next piece of news. GameStop Germany lists Spyro Reignited Trilogy for the Switch. So they might talk about this as well. A listing appeared on GameStop Germany for a Switch version of Spyro Reignited Trilogy. The retailer has an August 16th release date, though it could be a placeholder. We should also warn that the listing itself isn't a confirmation of an upcoming announcement.
There was an update to this article that the posting had been taken down by GameStop Germany.
Okay.
But there's been rumors for Spyro on Switch for a while, and since
before Spyro came out, it was just like, well,
yeah, it seems just like a natural thing. And
Crash came to the Switch, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it just makes plenty of sense that Spyro would.
Yeah, I had a coworker today talk to me. She's like, "Do you play games?" I was like, "Yeah." I said, "You should come check out our podcast weekly at Ware Gaming Weekly." And she's like, "I think there's this new Spyro game coming out." I'm like, "That came out like 6 months ago, and I've not played it yet." No, it was November. It might as well be 6 months ago. But anyway, not actually played it.
No, I haven't
but
played the Crash one either.
That's
but
true. So
I want to play them both, but it's not in the docket right now. Maybe we'll do it on Twitch.
yeah. Red Dead Redemption 2 multiplayer gets a big update. This is from Gary Jones at express.co.uk. Rockstar Games, you know, those people who made
Never
Red
heard
Dead
of 'em.
Redemption 2, has announced their next big update for Red Dead Redemption 2 Online. The new Red Dead Online patch is scheduled for launch on February 26th on both PS4 and Xbox One. The improvements include enhancements to the game's open world with new law and bounty systems, weapon balancing, and changes to players' blips on the minimap. We needed to change your blips because your blips were not right.
Bad blips.
Bad blips. It doesn't appear that Rockstar Games will be adding new story content with this new Red Dead Redemption 2 multiplayer update. This is a quote from them. Firstly, we're reducing the visibility of blips over long distances. Your map position won't display to other players unless you're nearby within 150 meters, and if you're slightly further away, you'll only appear when firing your weapon. Players in other towns or regions, for example, won't be visible. This prevents players from being repeatedly targeted across the map at long distances. We're also introducing a new system that highlights overly aggressive players, or as we like to call, griefers, which is not a style of zombie, but it might as well be. If your style of play becomes more hostile, your map position will become more visible to other players with a progressively darkening dot that incrementally shifts from blue to dark red. Your visibility increases through bad deeds such as attacking and killing other players or their horse outside of a structured mode. Free roam mission, event, or competition, and the shorter the time between bad acts, the more your visibility increases. Shift back to a more righteous path, and your visibility will fade over time. We're also introducing posse-wide parlays, improving feuds. You'll soon be able to initiate parlay that applies to your attacker's entire posse after just a single kill. Alternatively, if you'd rather challenge your opponent, you can initiate a feud, posse feud, or leader feud after one kill, quickly turning a dispute into a timed mini deathmatch for rival players to fight out amongst themselves in free roam, earning points for each kill on the opposing player. Plenty more specific details in the article, so go give express.co.uk a click. I'm actually, I wanted to get into Red Dead Online a lot, but one, I haven't finished Red Dead 2.
Yeah,
So I got to do that.
Beat it.
But in talking about the streaming stuff, I just love the idea of like having a crew and living in that world because that world is great. It's beautiful. But I don't know how much time I'll actually have to dedicate it. If this was like a full-time thing, then sure. But no. Are you interested in hopping in at all?
No.
No.
Maybe for a little bit, but not yet. And I don't know. There's just too many other games that are calling my interest. Of course, we might get into a lull here of interesting games. We got Days Gone in April, and I mean with Anthem, if Anthem is anything like Destiny, it might take over our lives. So I don't know.
Yeah. But if you're into Red Dead 2 Online or GTA Online for that matter, go check that out. So we remember back in November.
Remember the
whatever of November.
Was it November?
Maybe October.
I was thinking maybe October.
Telltale, the creators of the Walking Dead games, and the Batman game.
The Batman. They had
Guardians of the
Galaxy. They did
Tales of the Borderlands.
They also did Back to the Future and
those
Adventures of Sam and Max.
Something like that. Anyway, so back in the day, which was a Wednesday last year, Telltale closed.
Just abruptly.
Really abruptly.
They went. All the developers went to work, sat in a meeting, and were told that everybody was laid off, was let go, and they had 30 minutes to get out of the building.
There are plenty of articles you can go if you weren't aware of this.
Terrible situation.
It's a very terrible situation. However, there is a light for a few of those people. This is from Rebecca Valentine at gamesindustry.biz. With Telltale games as good as gone, there remains few, if any, true dedicated narrative adventure game studios. But a group of Telltale veterans have assembled a brand new studio that may, in some ways, be able to carry on that legacy. Uh, as reported by Variety, Ad Hoc Studio has been formed by four ex-Telltale developers in the following respective roles: CEO Mike Chung, COO Nick Herman, CTO Dennis Leonard, and CCO Pierre Charette. Herman, Leonard, and Charette have all left Telltale in February 2017 to join Ubisoft for an unknown project, while Chung departed earlier in 2016 for a stint at Night School Studios before rejoining the others to form Ad Hoc. All four held creative or writing roles while at Telltale. So these guys were actually
These guys weren't a
weren't
part of
there.
those layoffs.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they'll help
But
out.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of what I was thinking. While the group has plenty of experience with this narrative games from Telltale, they're also looking at examples such as Netflix interactive Black Mirror episode Bandersnatch for inspiration on how to proceed and don't want to remain stuck in Telltale's particular variety of choice-based play so much as they want to offer emotional experiences.
Can I go on a side note here? When I first saw Bandersnatch,
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a new nickname for Benedict Cumberbatch. I've heard so many names for him
Yeah.
that I saw Bandersnatch. I was like, why are they calling him
Benedict
Bandersnatch? Bandersnatch now. I was like, I don't even want to know. And it was like, no, it's a Black Mirror episode. I was like, oh, well, that's still weird. But okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So it's always exciting to hear about new studios.
Yeah.
Ad Hoc Studio. I do. It didn't really say
Exactly what they're going to do. But
what they're going to do and who they're going to bring in, but I'd like to see. Well, so there was one team that went over to Skybound
right.
to do. I think the Still Not Bitten team who worked on the final season, who was working on the final season of The Walking Dead, just to get it out there.
Yeah.
And then now we have
this Ad Hoc
Studio. So we'll see. How those collaborations go forward. I've always liked Telltale and then Deck Nine, or the developers for Life is Strange. Well, Deck Nine did the prequel, but I think it was it's another D.
No, it was Nod. Don't
Nod.
Yeah.
Do very similar style games.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to see more of that.
I can't wait for the final episode of Walking Dead to come out, and I can buy the whole season and finish it. I love the Walking Dead series, so excited about that.
Why don't you take this one?
All right. Got a couple Activision stories for you. Activision explains why it broke up with Bungie. This is Eddie McCook at GameSpot. As part of Activision Blizzard's earnings report today, I don't know what day this is, the company discussed its decision to split off from Bungie on the development of the Destiny franchise.
This was today.
Today, February 12th. I was going to say, I think I had that one last, so it should be today. But anyway, the company discussed its decision to split off from Bungie on the development of the Destiny franchise. President and Chief Operating Officer Cody Johnson started off by saying Activision Blizzard is confident that it was the right decision for both Activision Blizzard and Bungie to go separate ways, describing the breakup as a mutual amicable agreement. Johnson said the deal is the right path forward for each entity. Quote, Bungie gets to focus on the Destiny IP that they have created, and we get to focus on our biggest opportunities, on our biggest franchises with our best resources. Johnson said, quote, our decision was reached with mutual agreement with Bungie to sell back the commercial rights, and for us at least, it was rooted in our really our strategy overall. When end quote. When Activision Blizzard and Bungie originally signed their 10-year publishing deal for Destiny back in 2010, one key component of the agreement was that Bungie would get to retain the ownership of the Destiny IP. By comparison, Activision owns the IP for its other major franchises such as Call of Duty and World of Warcraft. There are a number of benefits to owning an IP, Johnson said. Quote, we did not own the underlying Destiny IP, and we do for all our other major franchises, which we think is not just a differentiator for us in the industry, he said, but also controlling the underlying IP gives us the chance to move in with new experiences and new engagement models, which also come with new revenue streams and structurally higher economics when you own the IP. End quote. Which says to me that they wanted to microtransaction the hell out of Destiny, and Bungie was not having it. And so, yeah, I mean that quote right there. I mean, this is an earnings call for their stockholders, so it makes sense to talk about that. But that really says we didn't have the ability to squeeze as many pennies out of all these players as we wanted to.
Yeah.
That's my take on it. You know, I appreciate that Activision helped them get Destiny off the ground, but like that just screams like money bags. Also during the call, Johnson said Activision Blizzard wanted to break up with Bungie because the Destiny franchise was failing to meet its commercial projections. Quote, Destiny is highly critically acclaimed, high quality content, but it was not meeting our financial expectations, he said. Specifically, Activision Blizzard said previously that Destiny 2 Forsaken failed to sell up to the company's expectation, though Bungie asserted that it wasn't disappointed with the game. When Activision Blizzard management conducted a financial review for 2019, the company saw signs that indicated Destiny would not be a material contributor to the company's profits. Not only that, but Activision Blizzard assigned some of its own studios, including High Moon Studios and Vicarious Visions, to assist Bungie in developing Destiny content faster. And this is where it gets a little like throwing shade at Bungie. Quote, Bungie was tying up one of our scarcest resources, developer talent, end quote. While High Moon and Vicarious Vision will continue to work with Bungie on Destiny content for a transition period, they will be freed up after this to work on other Activision projects. Earlier today, Activision Blizzard said it plans to increase the number of developers working on games like Call of Duty, Candy Crush, Overwatch, Warcraft, Hearthstone, and Diablo by about 20% in aggregate over the course of 2019. It could be that High Moon and Vicarious Visions will shift some of their efforts to these projects, but it hasn't been confirmed. Finally, Johnson offered a brief timeline of events that led up to the Activision Blizzard parting ways with Bungie and the Destiny series. He said that Activision Blizzard learned in November, after its earnings report, that Bungie wanted to get out of the publishing deal. This deal was done in late December, Johnson said. Before it was ultimately announced in early January. The bigger Activision Blizzard news today is that the company is cutting around 8% of its workforce in a layoff around that, in
a layoff round.
And a layoff round that could affect 800 people or more.
Thank you for segueing. Who was that?
Let's just say, I mean, I'm not an anti-capitalist at all. I get companies are in there to make money, but like that just rubbed me the wrong way reading that article. He's talking to his investors. I get what they're saying, but it just sounds like it just like I said, rubbed me the wrong way.
I don't like. Well, the way it was phrased, Bungie was tying up our scarcest resources, and it just feels like, well, you wanted this,
right?
And
it just
and you're taking up too much of our time. I guess the return. It's kind of like asking someone to do some work, but I guess they're just not doing it the way you wanted them to.
What these big publishers like Activision and EA, and we'll get into that little discussion later, is they don't feel like a project is worth it unless the return is like incredible. So like even if it's a good return, it doesn't matter. It's not a fantastic return where we could go over to Call of Duty or something else and just bleed them dry.
Yeah.
Is I mean, I'm being a little cynical about that because again, I'm not an anti-capitalist. I get they want to make money, but it just sounds all kinds of gross.
But leading into the
Layoffs.
layoffs that they were talking about, Jason Schreier, the only man who can report on this,
Hmm.
over at Kotaku, Activision Blizzard lays off hundreds of employees.
And let me just say, like, if you have Twitter, you need to follow Jason Schreier.
Mhm.
He's got all the scoops. He's an incredible reporter.
Scoops.
Probably one of if not the best reporter in the industry.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I don't actually know his Twitter handle, but
Um,
find him, Jason Schreier at Kotaku.
Publisher Activision Blizzard has begun its long rumored layoff process, informing employees this afternoon that it will be cutting staff. On an earnings call this afternoon, the company said it would be eliminating 8% of its staff. In 2018, Activision Blizzard had roughly 9,600 employees, which would mean nearly 800 people are now out of work. This afternoon, the mega publisher began notifying those who are being laid off across its various organizations, which include Activision, Blizzard, and King. On the earnings call, Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick told investors that the company had once again achieved record results in 2018, but that the company would be consolidating and restructuring because of missed expectations for 2018 and lowered expectations for 2019. The company said it would be cutting mainly non-game development departments and bolstering its development of staff for franchises like Call of Duty and Diablo. Development sources from across the industry told Kotaku this afternoon that the layoffs have affected Activision Publishing, Blizzard, King, and some of Activision's studios, including High Moon, who helped Destiny. At Blizzard, the layoffs appear only have affected non-game development departments, both of which were such as publishing and esports, both of which were expected to be hit hard. Over the last few years, many of our non-development teams expanded to support various needs. See Bungie. Blizzard President J. Allen Brack said in a note to staff around 1 p.m. today, currently staffing levels on some teams are out of proportion with our current release slate. This means we need to scale down some areas of our organization. I'm sorry to share that we will be parting ways with some of our colleagues in the U.S. today. In our regional offices, we anticipate similar evaluations subject to local requirements. The letter also promised a comprehensive severance package, continued health benefits, career coaching, and job placement assistance, as well as profit sharing bonuses for the previous year to those who are being laid off at Blizzard. There's no way to make this transition easy for impacted employees, but we're doing what we can to support our colleagues, Brack wrote. The news follows a month of rumors about the layoffs at the publisher, which heated up early last week as word began to spread that hundreds of people across Activision Blizzard's various divisions might lose their jobs. Leading up to today, some of the publisher's employees have been coming to work with no clue as to what might happen. One person at Blizzard told Jason this morning, that as employees arrived, they cried and exchanged hugs in the parking lot. Last fall, Kotaku reported that Blizzard's 2018 mandate had been to cut costs and produce more games, and that as a result, layoffs would likely hit the company's support departments even as Blizzard continues to expand its development teams. Brack's email suggests the same. It's critical that we prioritize product development and grow the capacity of the teams doing this work to best serve our player community, he wrote. We also need to evolve operationally to provide the best support for new and existing products. Meanwhile, in a press release to investors this afternoon, Activision CEO Bobby Kotick wrote, "While our financial results for 2018 were the best in our history, we didn't realize our full potential. To help us reach our full potential, we have made a number of important leadership changes. These changes should enable us to achieve many opportunities our industry affords us, especially with our powerful owned franchises, our strong commercial capabilities, our direct digital connections to hundreds of millions of players, and our extraordinary, talented employees." Now, I read that entire article. Go over to Kotaku and just click on it because that helps him. But it was important to get all of that in there.
Can I just say again that this is just gross? I mean, they're literally saying in the same breath that we have hit record we are breaking records, but we have to fire 800 people.
Like, we've had the most successful year we've ever had, but we have to.
But we didn't do it well enough. That it
It
just feels all kinds of wrong.
Trying to look at it from. Well, this is really hard since, I don't run a business. I don't do any of this, and I didn't even know. I didn't hear about the rumblings of Activision getting, slimming down. So, my attempt at trying to look at it from their perspective is not going to be a good one. So you have this company, and it's doing a lot of good work, but maybe it's not doing as good of a work you need. So you divorce Bungie because this franchise is not doing you good enough, and then I think you and I maybe off air joked about, well, maybe not joked, but we were just like, what games does Activision, as apart from Blizzard, control? And then when you include Blizzard, of course, you have a ton, which is probably, without knowing anything, where they're making most of their money.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, Call of Duty.
Well, yeah, Call of Duty, like on Activision side.
Yeah.
But then on the Blizzard side, Overwatch, WoW.
Yeah, Overwatch, WoW, and Diablo. Probably their biggest. They're probably their biggest moneymaker is Candy Crush.
Yeah. So what I really want to hear from them, outside of all this BS, is like, well, within what's the plan?
Right.
Like, I guess you can. Well, we're summing things down here so we can put more stuff here.
And it's possible there was more information actually being there. Companies restructure all the time. It's not just about 800 jobs were lost. That's just terrible. But you can't, as a business, you can't keep jobs just for the sake of keeping jobs. If it makes sense to cut jobs that are extraneous, then it makes sense. But to sit there and say, well, we've made a record year, so clearly we're doing something right. Let's fire 800 people. Does not, in the same breath, does not sound right.
Even if there were, like, I think that's probably the biggest issue with it, is just the articulation of it all.
Yeah.
It feels very insensitive, especially, like, if I were an employee. I mean, I'm not, and I'm already, like, upset about it. But if I were an employee who just got fired, reading the news that the CEO of my company said this in the same breath as you said, I would. And
then looking at the bonuses, and I don't have the numbers here, but like it was just like tens of millions of dollars that the Activision execs are making on top of all this, and then letting go. Now it's at least it's not like the Telltale situation where they're like, hey, you got 30 minutes to leave, you get nothing. Your health insurance ends at the end of the week, and you're just SOL. At least they're trying to show like they have compassion, but it just comes off.
What I left was the career counseling,
coaching. Career coaching.
Which, I mean, I think in a term is probably
I don't. Again, not to totally demonize Activision, because they are a business. It makes sense that they have to make changes, and they're going to lay people off. I mean, that happens in the game industry all the time. They ramp up for development. This is typically the developers, not necessarily the administration staff, but they ramp up for while they're making a game, and then the game releases, and then all that work kind of dissipates. So they tend to lay off a percentage, some 20, 30%, because they just don't need all that staff anymore, and it doesn't make sense to pay them when they don't need them to do anything. So that happens all the time in the game industry. So this kind of stuff isn't surprising. It's just, I think, mainly the wording and the fact that the numbers don't make sense. If you're making record profits, but you're still not making enough money to make yourself happy. So we gotta lay off 8% of our employees, and sorry about your luck. It just feels gross.
So this leads into this week's topic, which we've already really started discussing.
Yeah.
We also wanted to rope in EA and then continue with Activision with what's really going on, today I had mentioned at work I had listened to NPR, and they were talking about this Activision laying off, EA having some struggles. What I'm curious about, and I may be just I may be asking questions that you also don't know the answer to.
Yeah.
But when Activision says they've had the best year that they've had, what what was it like?
Yeah.
If it wasn't Destiny Forsaken, and if it wasn't, I mean, Call of Duty is probably a high mark on there.
Well, so I know for the past probably the majority of the last 10 years, Call of Duty games have been the number one selling game of the year
Mm-hmm.
until this year or this past year. It was Red Dead Redemption 2. They fell to a single player, virtually a single player game,
Which is odd.
a 70 some odd hour single player game.
Which is odd to me that if you were to ask me without having read this article, hearing them talk, you know, when was Activision at its peak? I would not say 2018.
No.
I would say, I couldn't give you a year because I'm not that good at time, but I would say probably Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah, probably between Modern Warfare 2 and Black Ops 2.
Well, that whole series of years, which again are the same years that were they had the best selling games.
Yeah, and then you would have their other properties like Guitar Hero,
Mm-hmm.
and
you were hearing much more about Activision in like 2010 through 2013 ish, with Guitar Hero, with Call of Duty, and what I guess now that you could probably point to Spyro and Crash as like indicators of like something positive, but not on the same level.
No, I think those games were more like a good good faith games.
Yeah,
they weren't expecting
money
commercial.
makers. Yeah.
They weren't expecting the money makers. They were doing that to partner with Sony and be like, hey, we're doing this thing. We're going to help you put out these games that you used to own that we bought.
And then EA, we didn't actually include this article, but it's more of something we can just bring up than anything else. I think we had actually, did we talk about on the podcast Disney's? Yeah, we talked about the cancellation of Star Wars. Well, since then, Bob Iger, who is the CEO of Disney, had come out and said that, and this is the abbreviated. You can find it online if you haven't already heard about it. That he's not really upset with the relationship with EA. It was another earnings call or conference call with all the investors and stuff like that. I might be getting some details wrong, probably getting a lot of details wrong, but it was more about how they don't touch games anymore.
Yeah.
Which they did Disney Infinity. They had Buena Vista.
Yeah.
For a while. They don't touch any games anymore. They just license. But it's interesting to me. I was thinking about this when I was listening to other podcasts and other people talk about this. Is that one? It doesn't really seem like, based off of this conversation, that I didn't really relate to you much.
Yeah.
If you read the articles, it doesn't really seem like he knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And in an earnings call or in a conversation with investors, you're also not going to.
You're not gonna
vindicate the people who are, giving you the money. You're not gonna say, "Oh, this decision we made 10 years ago or 5-6 years ago,
right,
was a bad one." But he really kind of talked like he didn't really know what was going on.
It's kind of like it really just felt like, we're bad at making video games, so we're just gonna let them do whatever they want for this cycle.
We're just gonna trust them.
Yeah.
And then, but
I mean, they're doing better than we would have.
Yeah.
That's basically what they're saying, which is also kind of strange for Disney to be like, well, we suck at game. We like Disney to admit that they suck at anything.
Yeah.
And kind of like
it almost feels kind of patronizing in a way, in a way that's like a
Well,
parent telling you like this is your thing.
I
Knowing
also saw it was like the creative director or one of the developers that worked on like Epic Mickey. They're like,
yeah,
like I mean, I felt like we made a pretty good game, and a bunch of other people thought it was pretty good too. They kind of felt like a little like,
put off.
hey, like
Yeah. Uh, one thing I wanted to bring up was so Disney owns Star Wars
mhm,
and they also own
Marvel.
Marvel, and somehow the Marvel hand Disney owns these two properties, and somehow their relationship with the Marvel Game Studios, who's managing Spider-Man and all the mobile games, is somehow is like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
Well, sorry, finish your thought.
Well, so my thought process is like, how is this branch working so well? Um, that obviously had to been appointed by Disney at some point. Disney had to talk to somebody to be like, you should head this. But also when they come to Star Wars, so Marvel has a team that's dedicated to finding teams to make good games.
Mhm.
And someone at Disney had to point someone to
Yeah.
do that or have a conversation. So how come over on the Star Wars side, it shouldn't have happened the exact same way? It's all under the same umbrella. How could that have not happened the same way?
So when Disney, which was first? Uh,
I feel like the EA was probably first.
when no, I think Disney bought Star Wars first. So when Disney bought Star Wars was not in a good place.
That's true.
The games typically were mediocre, except for The Force Unleashed was awesome. Don't at me. Uh, uh, people had negative memories and reactions to the prequel trilogy for many reasons. Um, so the Star Wars franchise was not in a great place. So when Disney took over, they, uh, my guess is they took a more direct oversight of what Star Wars was doing and put people in place for the films that knew what they were doing or they trusted to do what they were doing and have generally done okay making decent movies. Even if you didn't like the Last Jedi, like the Force Awakens and the Rogue One were great movies. Um, whereas when they bought Marvel, Marvel was already killing it,
That's true.
and they already had people in place doing good things with Marvel. So they just let Marvel do Marvel and are making money on it. And so there's the difference: is Marvel people were involved with Spider-Man, but they, Disney doesn't want to do games, so there's no like Star Wars people working on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're not.
Oh,
They're not.
okay. I see what you're saying.
So with Marvel, they have like people in place like that care about.
So when Disney bought them, nothing really changed except where it goes.
Right.
But on Star Wars, they took over all of Star Wars deal. It wasn't like Star Wars already
Because they bought Star Wars, they retconned. They said all those stories, all the novels, everything that's not the movies doesn't exist anymore.
right.
Only these things exist. We're going to carefully craft this world, whereas Marvel was already going,
Right. Right.
and that gave I don't know like all the nitty gritty about it, but it may have been an early like uh, foresight of Marvel be like, well, the best chance of getting our other franchises back would be to team up with Disney to try to get Fox's properties and
Long
Sony's
game.
properties. So, and they've slowly been able to do that. I don't know whose idea that was or which side, but
Right.
it was clearly like now we have a good Spider-Man movie, we have good Spider-Man games, and that not that the other Spider-Man movies weren't okay, but now we have it all under one umbrella. Marvel has it back, and they have creative control, whereas the people who were doing Star Wars weren't doing it great,
Right.
and so they wanted people who knew what they were doing to do it, and that's why they've let EA, who make games, make the games, and they haven't like the games they have released, even though they haven't been like rock stars, they haven't been just garbage, and they haven't I mean, despite the microtransaction problems with Battlefront 2, the campaign was fine. Could have been better, but there were some shoehorning things in Battlefront 2. But it was a fine game. It looked incredible. The story was predictable, but it was fun. And I mean, the Battlefront 1 was fun to play, so they just built on that. And not to mention, someone brought up the VR mission in
Yeah.
Battlefront 1. That was awesome.
Yeah.
So it's not like EA is they fumbled putting out a ton of games for Star Wars and like handling what fans think they want.
Mm-hmm.
Like we want a single player. I don't know about Uncharted, and people say they want the Uncharted. I want like the Mass Effect of Star Wars.
Right.
Uncharted's a great game. I just think it's like popcorny,
Mm-hmm.
like popcorn flick. It's a pulp fiction where I want something meaty like a Mass Effect.
Right.
And that could have happened, but they got Anthem.
Yeah.
And
I also wanted to go into with the what little time we have left to talk about. So Apex Legends just came out.
yes,
This is so going more into the EA side of things. Well,
yeah,
not Star Wars related specifically, but Respawn just came out with Apex Legends. There's reported at least one more game in the Titanfall universe. I didn't grab a news article from this.
yeah. It was worded weird. It's like you haven't seen the last of Titanfall, and there's a they call it like a Titanfall experiment
Yeah, but
project or anyway.
I'm not really going to dig into that one. And then, of course, we're supposed to be getting in this fall Jedi: The Fallen Order, one game that's supposed to actually come out from Star Wars. So
This is all Respawn.
This is all Respawn. But then on the other hand, you have Anthem coming out,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're supposed to be getting in March Battlefield 5's Battle Royale
Yeah.
Firestorm. So the conversation that was a year ago, 2 years ago, when Titanfall 2 came out, was Titanfall 2 was cannibalized by Battlefield and other shooters.
Yeah.
And now the conversation I've been curious about is if Apex, for its free to play and how awesome it's supposed to be, is going to somehow ruin sales just weeks before, a week, 2 weeks before Anthem comes out, and then how that's going to affect Battlefield 5's Firestorm, which I completely forgot about.
Yeah.
Until I remember, oh yeah, Battlefield 5's a game.
So let's take it back even further. So Titanfall 2 was fine great campaign. It was fun to play. I played like 2 rounds of multiplayer and just knew I sucked, so I just didn't get into it. But it fell right between Call of Duty and Battlefield for some asinine reason. No reason to do that to that game. People love Titanfall, and it just killed it. The people thought it killed the franchise. Clearly, they were doing something else with it, probably a mobile game. But Titanfall 1 also had problems because it was exclusive to the Xbox One.
360.
Yeah, Xbox 360. So it was not accessible to half at that point.
But I mean, it did really well.
It did really
on
well.
The 360.
But it didn't come over to PlayStation. That's all I'm saying is it's always been like missing out on its player base for some reason or another. And so now it's got the chance to bite back. But I think Apex has a zero effect on how terrible the Battlefield 5's Battle Royale is going to do.
Do you think it's going to do terrible?
Oh, I think there's no chance that it comes out and it does well. Even if it's good, I think it's too late.
I think. I mean, I think the people who want to play, who like Battlefield and want to play Battlefield multiplayer games, will play Firestorm.
I think people who have Battlefield, and it's at least a few people because it's in the top 10, will play the Battle Royale. But I don't know that people aren't going to buy Battlefield 1 for the Battle Royale.
5. You said Battlefield 1. It's Battlefield 5.
Battlefield 5.
We just bought Battlefield 1 for a few years. and which is not the first Battlefield.
No,
But anyway,
it's the first. It's the first war game in World War One, though.
Yeah.
Well, first first person shooter.
Right.
Anyway,
so it's just interesting to see the cycle of. It feels like someone over there is not making good decisions, but I've heard that it's not all the same people making the same decisions.
no.
It's like, Respawn wanted the Titanfall 2 date.
I don't know if I believe that.
I don't know if I do, but I've heard Respawn wanted the Titanfall 2 date, but then it
Why
sounds
would-
like EA is just like throwing paint at a wall and see what sticks. But there's got to be a method to the madness. I mean, they're making money
Yeah.
somehow.
It
So
just seems like, we thought it was a thought that the Call of Duty's Battle Royale was going to be a cash-in, Me Too kind of deal.
Mhm.
And it came out and people really like it. It was like the polished version of Call of Duty, or of PUBG.
Yeah.
My problem is the time to kill in Call of Duty is just way too short, and it's just not fun for me.
Mhm.
It feels like if you take a shot, you're like, if someone gets a shot on you, you're dead. Whereas like in Destiny, you can maneuver around, and I've heard that you can kind of do something like that in Apex. So I'm looking
Mhm.
forward to playing it. I think I don't know. I just don't know. I just think the Battlefield Battle Royale was in trouble from the start, and they
Mhm.
just it was remember like tacked on multiplayer.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel organic, and it had to get pushed. And maybe they were like, well, we'll let Respawn do its thing and put it here, and even if this doesn't do well, we're gonna make money.
Right.
And it gives Respawn a chance to get back into the spotlight.
Yeah.
So
Do you think that, and I don't know if Apex or if the developers Respawn have talked about this in any sort of way, but do you think Apex is sort of like a game to get them to other games, or do you think that this is the game that they want to do?
when I was reading through the tweets that they had to say, what they had to say was, especially from Jason Schreier, where he thought they were working on a Battlefield, or Titanfall 3, or that they were working on a game that was a stopgap game to the Titanfall 3. And when the news came out, this was coming out and it was dropped, they're like, they said like, we weren't working on Titanfall 3.
That's true.
This is the game we were working on.
Mhm.
This is not a stopgap. This is not a stopgap game. This is our game. And so they've committed to this as this isn't just a side project for them. And I've started following a bunch of the developers on Twitter, and they're just blown away. They seem just really genuine kind of guys. I'm enjoying finding those developers on Twitter.
Yeah, for sure.
I like it. Drew Murray from used to be of Insomniac. Now he's over at The Initiative, the secretive Xbox studio, whatever they're doing over there.
Mhm.
And I'm making a habit of finding these
For sure.
developers, Mark Dura and Mike Gamble over at the Anthem team over at BioWare.
You know who I haven't heard a lot from is Casey.
Casey Hudson. Well, I just actually read a headline that he was talking about that they're definitely not done with Mass Effect.
Mm-hmm. But he worked on Anthem too, right?
I think he might have had a supporting role, but he's moved on probably to Dragon Age.
So Mike Gamble is kind of like the
Mike
Casey
Gamble is
role.
the guy.
Okay.
For Anthem.
Cool. Well, keep it tuned to see what EA is going to be doing, because none of us really know.
Yeah. But we're definitely going to be playing some EA games this month.
Yes, we are.
So follow us on Twitter at Ware Gaming _. Find us at Facebook.
We're not closing out yet.
We're not? Okay.
No.
Sorry. We skipped the out. The game's coming out.
So we got the game's coming out next week. Quite a few. Most of them all are on the same day. Most of them were all on the same day a week later, and then all got scared and jumped back a week. So coming out on February 14th on Valentine's Day you can get romantic with the person that you love by playing Civilization 6 Gathering Storm, which may happen if you play Civilization 6. So that comes to PC. I don't know how you would do that with the person. I guess you could both have a PC. I don't know. Is Civilization 6 multiplayer? Can like you have? Isn't that Risk?
I know 5 was multiplayer, so yeah.
Crackdown 3.
And 6 has been out. That's just an expansion.
Gathering Storm.
Gathering Storm.
So and these are all on February 15th, all coming to PS4, Xbox One, and PC.
No.
All of these say PS4, Xbox One, and PC.
Except
Crackdown. Crackdown 3 on Xbox One and PC. Metro Exodus on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Far Cry New Dawn and Jump Force. All of these were announced for February 22nd because they were all announced on February 22nd. With Anthem, they all moved.
Let's see. It was. I don't think Crackdown was actually announced for the 22nd, but it was assumed that it was going to be the 22nd. Metro Exodus was. Far Cry was not, but I don't know why they decided to go to the 15th. Days Gone was supposed to be on the 22nd, along with Anthem.
Yeah.
So you had all those games coming out, so everybody moved out of the way, and half of them jumped on the same day a week earlier.
Though, I mean, I think the thing about these games is that
they're all pretty different.
They're all pretty different. So the people who want them, I mean, they're going to do well enough. It's not like, you know.
Crackdown 3 isn't going to do gangbusters, but I hear people who
I don't know. It'll probably do, not as well as, but it'll probably do the Kingdom Hearts thing where people have been waiting for it for a long time. Metro, those people will play it, except not on Steam. Far Cry New Dawn, I've heard it's more of the same, but kind of neat. I probably won't be playing it because I don't play Far Cry. But cheers to you who do. And Jump Force, I only really want to play it because you can play Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's my childhood right there. Though I imagine playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In that game will like playing Pokemon Trainer, and Smash will just be like you summon Blue Eyes or Dark Magician. Oh, if you get I can only get a demo.
What was the attack he did?
Exodius?
Yeah, like it was like.
Well, it was like
ultimate obliviation or
obliviate is what it was, and then
obliviate sounds like a.
That was Harry Potter spell.
That was the spell to erase memories.
I don't know. I can pretty much hear the Yugi yell anything in his like obliviate or
go Pikachu.
But if you could like assemble all 5 of in Jump Force, like there was like a combos you had to. I don't know. Anyway,
he starts throwing out a leg and the head. I didn't. I only played Yu-Gi-Oh for him.
Yeah.
I think most of those games, Crackdown 3. I don't know about Metro Exodus. There was a list of games coming to Game Pass.
Oh, I didn't
Xbox.
look that up. Well, Crackdown 3 is coming out day and date with Game Pass.
Right. All Xbox, Microsoft first-party games are going to be on Game Pass day and date. I think Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider, or Shadow of the Tomb Raider. We'll look it up real quick for you.
All right, Polygon looks like it might have some details. All right, Xbox Game Pass subscribers will get access to a fresh batch of blockbuster Xbox One games in February, including Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Crackdown 3, and the first 2 Batman Arkham games.
Oh, that's right, and the first season of The Walking Dead, Telltale's The Walking Dead.
Oh, and The Blob.
The Blob.
Huge shout out to Batman Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. Arkham City, one of my favorite games of all time.
Both those games are incredible. Even though the last one, Arkham Knight, is not included in here. Arkham Knight gets some hate.
I mean, it's a beautiful game.
Like some of my favorite moments, like when I first turned and something changed, it broke my mind.
As someone who wants to be a filmmaker, or I guess I can say I'm a filmmaker. filmmaker.
You
I don't
are
know.
a filmmaker.
That game changed the way, though it also made me think if I wanted to do what that game did, I'd probably be making horror movies.
Yeah.
But there's some really cool things that game did, Arkham Knight, but it relied too heavily on some mechanics that were cool
tank.
until they weren't.
Until they weren't. The driving the Batmobile was awesome, but like
Having boss fights in the Batmobile, you don't want to do that. You want to get out and punch people.
I want to fight Deathstroke, not like
shoot him with my tank.
Shoot at his tank with my tank. That's just dumb.
Why does Deathstroke have a tank? Anyway, Arkham City is probably my most played game. I feel in terms of how many times I've played it, not in hours spent.
I was gonna say, Destiny's got that one for me,
but anyway, so go check those games out. We will be starting to stream games, as Josh said earlier, and maybe doing some other stuff that we won't say yet because I haven't figured them out yet.
Yeah.
So, in the meantime, you can check us out. Well, you started to it, so do it again.
So you can find us Facebook and Instagram at Ware Gaming Weekly. You can find us on Twitch and Twitter at Ware Gaming _ and you can find me at Joss1015.
And you can find me at Speak Nicklish. And you can write in to weekly@waregaming.com.
And go to waregaming.com, where most of this information will be on there. So
yeah. Please stay tuned. Please write in. And, on the podcast services, you can review, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And until next week, goodbye.
Bye.